Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We're going to talk about AEW Dynamite from June the 1st, 2022. We're not going to do news and notes because we're going to be talking a lot about some outside the ring stuff. So, first match, CM Punk and FTR versus Max Caster and the Gun Club. Jim Cornette's favorite match. He loves everybody in this match. I don't think he loves Max Caster. But he likes the Gun Club, he likes FTR, he likes CM Punk. Alright, so of course Max Caster is rapping. He does some Amber Heard jokes. He does some other stuff. Nothing that hits too hard. I'm not really a big fan of the Acclaimed and the Gun Club being friends, because I don't understand what connects these two groups together, outside of them both just being silly. And I guess Billy Gunn is supposed to be mentoring the Acclaimed. But how the hell is he going to mentor the Acclaimed? Like, he doesn't... I guess he can mentor anybody because he's Billy Gunn, but at the same time, like, what do they got in common? That's the thing I'm trying to figure out here. Like, what do they have in common? CM Punk slipped off the springboard clothesline, which he seems to do in every single match that he's in now at some point. I did like how he countered the Fame Master, and he managed to actually hold. I can't tell the Gun Club apart. I would need their identification in order to tell these two guys apart. So whichever one it was, he did a good job of helping CM Punk. But CM Punk got him back up there with one arm, which is pretty good. Good strength by CM Punk. And he countered the Fame Master. That was pretty cool. And they win with the big rig. It's no big deal. Match is completely unimportant. So Max Caster, because they were in Los Angeles, he went and walked the Hollywood Walk of Fame, where he saw the Walk of Fame for Vince McMahon, to which he took a picture of himself giving it the finger. And I was like, ooh, edgy. You gave the finger to the ground. It's a granite block. You flipped off a granite block. That's like if you would have rolled past his house and gave it the finger or something like that. It's like, okay. Alright. Well, I don't know. He did it for clout, because that's exactly what happened on Twitter. As soon as he did it, there was a lot of people jumping on both sides of the fence. You know, some people are like, man, this is so lame, this is so silly. Other people are like, yeah, hell yeah, man, show him how you really feel, Max. I'm just kind of looking like, it doesn't really make much sense. Like, whenever people, for starters, I have one of my pet peeves is that big middle finger gimmick. It's like, it's so, you have to be like 15 to think that that's kind of cool. I'm going to take a picture with the middle finger up. It's like, ugh. It's like one of the weirdest unadult things that you could do. So I'm already kind of like, not a big fan of that. But then when it's an inanimate object, like people flipping off cardboard cutouts of like the president or something like that, you're like, come on, that's straight up rent free right there. If you're flipping off pictures of guys like, fuck you, I hate you, it's like, that guy doesn't know you exist, man. What you so mad about? You know, you're gonna take a picture of it and put it online? That's weird. Just weirdo behavior, but not anything worth talking too much about. I did want to mention that I did see it, and I did thought it was pretty weird. You know, AEW does, their wrestlers, like I said, it does come across like a cult, you know, and something that goes against the cult, whatever it is, wherever it may be, is prime target to be made fun of. Anyway, let's move on to something that's actually more important. CM Punk cuts promo saying that he's never done drugs in his life, but he imagines that's what it feels like. Which is, you know, the adulation from the crowd. He then says that he wouldn't be here without his mistakes, and he's got to learn. He's going to learn, and he knows that he's got to get better. Dax gets the microphone, says that he has done all those things CM Punk didn't do, and they do feel good. But you know, pro wrestling means the world to him and his family. It's the only thing that means more to him than pro wrestling. And then he says anybody from any company or anybody within this company, you know, it's an open challenge. So that's it. And CM Punk says that brings us to New Japan, and that he knows that the forbidden door is behind the curtain. And he wants to know who his opponent will be. And I'm thinking it's a 6-man tag. So I was expecting 3 guys to come out. And then it was Hiroshi Tanahashi. And I looked at that and said, Tanahashi versus CM Punk. Very cool on paper. On paper, this match is very good. If you're familiar with Hiroshi Tanahashi, you know the ace. That boy can get busy. He's very good. Very good. But if you follow New Japan, you know that Hiroshi Tanahashi's best days are not with us right now. His knees are no good. He's still a great character. I mean, he was the John Cena of New Japan, but his finisher was a frog splash in which he landed on his knees all the time. So now his knees are shot. Sometimes it really hurts to watch Tanahashi wrestle because he can barely move. It's like occasionally he looks really good, and then sometimes he looks really bad. So you're never really sure what you're going to get. But Hiroshi Tanahashi is sort of like Jeff Hardy right now, where your expectations will not be met. That doesn't mean that on paper it's not a big match, though. Clearly Okada dodged this bullet, and he didn't want nothing to do with it. He don't want nothing to do with this. But I'm not going to shit on it. I actually like Hiroshi Tanahashi versus CM Punk. I think it's a pretty even contest. The partly washed CM Punk versus the partly washed Hiroshi Tanahashi. Neither one of them are in their prime. It's a dream match for people who may be interested in those kinds of... And it's a great tentpole match for this show. Because it's a match that I don't think it's ever happened before. And it's 2 big stars that these people recognize as big stars. Hiroshi Tanahashi is, the biggest star in New Japan, arguably bigger than Okada. Well, not now, obviously, because Okada can still perform at a high level and Hiroshi Tanahashi cannot. But at his peak, I'm pretty sure Tanahashi was a bigger star than Okada. And CM Punk, who when he was at his peak, he was a pretty big star too in WWE, second only to John Cena. So in 2011, this would have broke the internet into pieces because both of these guys would have been in their prime. Tanahashi still wouldn't have been able to cut a promo in English, but you're not expecting him to. But he would have been a tremendous challenge for CM Punk 10 years ago. Tanahashi would have been... it wouldn't have even crossed my mind to say Tanahashi was better than Punk, especially in the ring, 10 years ago. As far as having charisma and persona, Tanahashi is different level. I'm talking... Tanahashi is one of the few guys that are Japanese, I don't know how much English he speaks, not enough. But he has charisma. And when you have charisma, that shit goes across boundaries. It crosses cultural boundaries. Tanahashi has charisma. Shinsuke Nakamura has charisma. Okada has charisma. Tetsuya Naito has charisma. When you have charisma, it doesn't matter if you don't speak the fucking language. Now, they don't have as much charisma, but they have charisma. And CM Punk would have had a problem with them in the ring. Because, that style, that style is fast and it's tough. And I'm wondering how Punk is going to be able to hang in there with these guys. But, I was thinking that. But seeing how his opponent is Tanahashi, I say, okay, this is more his speed. Because Tanahashi can't go full speed anymore. And Punk can't go full speed anymore either. So this is going to force these 2 old veterans to find a way to make their match really good without it being what it would have been 10 years ago. Because that's kind of what came into my mind immediately upon seeing this. I was like, damn, this would have been fantastic 10 years ago. Before Tanahashi had all those knee surgeries, it would have been great. Before Punk took his ball and went home, it would have been great. But now, it's kind of like Punk is good, Tanahashi is good, it's just a good match between 2 good guys. It's like, no, it's not, no, I'm about to say it's like Undertaker and Sting, if you saw that match. More like Undertaker and Goldberg. Like, if you saw Undertaker and Goldberg 10 years prior, it would have been much better than it was in Saudi Arabia. Do I think this match will be that bad? No, absolutely not. You know, they seem to have more of a bearing over who they are, and they actually have come to grips with who they are in terms of Tanahashi and CM Punk. They actually accept their limitations, unlike, you know, Goldberg and Undertaker, which didn't. It was part of the problem. They wouldn't admit that they were two old guys in there and just keep it simple. They try to do everything that they normally do, and it didn't quite work out. But I'm not shitting on this. I think I like this match. Will it sell $50 pay-per-views or whatever? Not me. You know, I'm not a huge New Japan guy. But I can see how if you are in the New Japan camp, you would be enticed by this match. I see why you would be interested. But the question is Okada actually going to be here? I heard his wife is pregnant. And he might not be able to be in the United States for Forbidden Door. So, who knows? We shall see. Alright, so the next segment was MJF. And MJF comes out here, no neck brace, nothing to sell his injuries other than him saying, I'm in a lot of pain right now. Then he says there's a lot of big executives, big merger that happened. Talking about the Warner Brothers Discovery thing. So he wouldn't want to embarrass Tony Khan. Then he talks about how it's too little too late to hash things out. And he's created moment after moment for this company, and he gets no respect. That he has been under a microscope, 26 years old. He has to be perfect. He's the only guy who can carry this company into the future. And he says that he hears a lot of cheers, but he also hears some boos. He says, for those of you who are cheering, where have you been this whole weekend when you called me unprofessional and an unprofessional piece of shit? And it was right then and there that I said, this is a work. Right there. I was okay with it up till right there. And I was like, this is a work. 100% work. That means it was a work the whole time. We'll talk about it a little bit more in a minute. So MJF then says, you know, to put it in short terms, that he didn't want to be here anymore. And he says that a lot of fans hate him, don't want him here because he doesn't chase star ratings. He doesn't do a lot of flips and dives. He's the guy who makes you feel. Then he says he's a generational talent that he feels like he's been taken for granted. He's the second minute by minute top draw in AEW, which, okay. And that Tony Khan has been hoarding money to give to ex-WWE talents. He just really came hard with some information. And it got all the dirt sheet guys and, you know, the work shoot crowd. It got them all greased up. For me, like I said, once I got into the pocket that it's an absolute work, I kind of stepped out of it. And what I mean by that is, I now started to look at it like a work. I didn't start looking at it as, you know, a guy is airing his grievances. I looked at it as, okay, how are they going to make money off this? You know, because that's the point of this. That's the point of works, is you're trying to figure out how they're making money off this. Now, I was one of those people that said, hey, there is no real end game to, you know, MJF skipping out on this meet and greet. You know, it cost AEW money, you know, and it pissed off a lot of fans. What's the end game there for that situation? And that's what made me think that it was somewhat real. And then I started to, you know, the dirt sheets didn't really know too much. And then there was people in the background. And I got to give them some credit. I know Mark Madden was one of them. Billy Body was another one. There were some other people out there who were saying, it's a work. It's all a work. You know, they're working you. These guys are in on it. The dirt sheet writers, they're in on it. And I kept saying, like, you know, look, they don't have much integrity. But they still have to have some, right? They have to have some integrity. And then I realized in the middle of this promo that no, they don't. And I feel like they've been running a disinformation campaign. I just feel like the dirt sheets were in on it the whole time and led us down the line of believing MJF is this disgruntled wrestler, so he can cut this pipe bomb promo. And this will be his version of the pipe bomb promo, where he gets to go after Tony Khan for being cheap and not wanting to pay him. You know, and I was kind of like, I didn't feel like, oh, that was a good one. Like, you know, when you can't figure out the magic trick, you give the magician credit. You say, oh, that's a good one. That was pretty good. I like that. I like optical illusions and stuff like that. I love that shit. Ben and Teller, what was it, Fool Us or something like that they had the show. I love watching clips of it on YouTube. Got to give them credit, you know, when they can do something that's pretty slick. That's one of the best things about wrestling, is sometimes you fall into something that's really slick, and you're like, hey, you got to give the guys credit for that one. But this one felt dirty. It felt dirty because it's like they didn't do anything between them that got everybody all riled up and twisted around. They played it through the dirt sheets. And the dirt sheets can say that they didn't know anything and they were just playing it off and all that kind of stuff. But no, it was impossible. It was the dirt sheets that kept running we'll see him, will MJF even show up for Double or Nothing? Will he even be there? He showed up a minute before and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, wait a minute. You know, like, what? And like it was them pushing that stuff out there. MJF is like, and then you realize it, like, you feel like a fool a little bit later. Like, as people talk to me about it, and I talk to other people about it, I say, when you had CM Punk's pipe bomb promo, right? His contract was up like within that month. They had a few weeks to get it together, you know. So he was given space to sort of sell himself to WWE. You know, I'm out of here. My contract is going to come up, but before I leave, let me do this thing and see if I can increase my value. And he cut the pipe bomb promo that we know, and it worked. You know, he got a huge raise, sent to the next stratosphere. You know, it became all kinds of mainstream. I remember Jim Rome wants to talk to CM Punk. Jim Rome ain't never talked about wrestling ever. And he wants to talk to CM Punk after this pipe bomb promo. I was like, oh, this shit worked. It was lit. Okay, it worked. We're not getting the same thing here. Mainly because, and I said this on Twitter, when these guys do the, you know, what a very enterprising young man on Twitter calls beefing with the man behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz. You know, WCW did it, TNA did it, WWE did it. It backfires quite often because it just ends up turning the promotion heel. The thing about why it works, though, when it does work, like when it worked in WWE, is because the crowd already has some kind of heat with the boss. Like, Vince Russo is already very well, you know, he wasn't liked. So turning Vince Russo into a character on screen that gets yelled at and beat up, okay, believable. And they did the same thing at TNA, you know, and the same thing with Jeff Jarrett and Dixie Carter and all of them, you know. Vince McMahon, same thing. Vince, you know, ruined his reputation with the Montreal Screwjob. He ruined his reputation with the audience. And everybody like, oh, Ring Boy scandal, all of this stuff. Like, yeah, all that stuff happened. But the audience was still hanging in there and realized that, you know, that was that. But Montreal was Vince McMahon himself, outing himself as the boss of the company and interjecting himself into this match between Bret and Shawn and jerking Bret. It put all of this heat on him. He already had heat. So when you started doing the man behind the curtain is holding us back, you know, the authority and all that kind of shit that they would do later on, there was already some heat there. There's already some heat between Triple H never wanted to put anybody over, and Stephanie's a moron, yada, yada, yada. So it's easy for people to get into that, you know. In this situation, Tony Khan doesn't have any heat with his audience. You know, they worship Tony Khan. So even if they believed MJF is this underpaid, overproducing, big-time draw, they still don't hate Tony Khan. And then if Tony Khan is not going to become an on-screen character, what is the payoff for all of this stuff? Now, one of my subscribers and somebody who's probably listening said that perhaps the payoff is to have another Le Pipe Bomb machine where you can run this promo for all time, and it could be an all-time great promo, like CM Punk's all-time great promo, the Pipe Bomb promo. I say, well, the Pipe Bomb promo is one of those things that you just can't reproduce. You can't reproduce it because it's not about what's said or done. It's about the completely the context of everything. Who CM Punk is, what he represented at that time, his position in the company at that time, his opponent, John Cena, what he represents, his position in the company at the time, Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis, Stephanie, what WWE is. All of that is why it worked. WWE was the machine. It was a place that pushed guys like John Cena, overlooking guys like CM Punk. And it was the audience that almost always preferred a guy like John Cena to CM Punk. And it was CM Punk putting himself on that level and saying, I was always better than these guys, but the company never gave me the push. You know, the forgotten part of the Pipe Bomb promo was that he blamed the fans for being the people who bought the posters that he wasn't on. And, you know, all that other stuff. You know, him not being featured, being focused on. MJF can't say that. He is featured. He is focused on. He's just saying, I'm underpaid for what I produce. And we can buy that. To a degree, we can buy that. I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with, you know, MJF saying, hey, dig into your pocketbook and pay me like you pay these ex-WWE guys. What if I was an ex-WWE guy? And I was like, okay. But by this point, like I said, we're in full work mode. He had lost me as somebody who was intrigued in the story. Because now I know that I'm being worked. It's one thing for me to not know that I'm being worked. But now that I know I'm being worked, I'm looking for the hook. I'm looking for the hook in this thing. What's the hook? And then he says, I don't want to wait. I don't want to be here in 2024. I don't want to wait. I want you to fire me. And I said, is that the hook? Is that the hook where MJF now is going to be, for the next 18 months apparently, a complete and total douchebag to the highest degree? He's going to try to come out here and cut these Pipe Bomb promos every week until he's fired. I mean, yes, he did a lot of cussing in this promo too. But understand, when he started trying to do the whole thing that was supposed to be offensive, where they cut the cameras off and turned his mic off, it was the one time that AEW censors were perfect. You didn't hear nothing he said. If he really wanted to get fired, and it was really a shoot, he'd called him a faggot or something like that on TV. Then he probably would have gotten suspended or something. It was a work. You know, and to me, I've never really been a big fan of work shoots. To me, it seems kind of lazy. It almost always goes the wrong way in terms of people get confused about what's the work and what's the shoot. And then you try to get confused about what's the payoff for this fucking thing. So now we're stuck with this MJF is going to be this disgruntled employee or this disgruntled contractor who wants out of his contract. So now we went from a storyline where Wardlow wanted out of his contract via storyline to now MJF wants out of his contract. And that should tell you right there that it's a work. Because it's parallel storytelling. It took 2 years for Wardlow to get out of his contract. Now you're telling me they're about to run this MJF once out of AEW for the next 2 damn years? Next year and a half, 18 months of MJF trying to get out of his AEW contract? If he wanted to get out of his AEW contract, we know exactly the things that he can do to get out of that contract. So he doesn't want to get out of the contract. That means it's not a shoot. It's a fucking work. So at that point, it's just a storyline. So that means he needs to have an opponent or a series of opponents, and I don't see one yet. Now maybe it'll appear later. I know that They said after the commercial break went off, CM Punk came out there and ran MJ off. And some people have said, so that's the goal, is to double back on MJF and CM Punk at some point later on. And maybe MJF will win the title from Punk. And they'll try to do some kind of sweet poetry where MJF's pipe bomb leads to him beating CM Punk for the title. Especially considering MJF used ex-WWE guys in his promo, and CM Punk, highest paid ex-WWE guy on the roster. Again, it's a fucking work. Which means, if it's a work now, it was probably already a work, even over the weekend when they fucked people over on the meet and greet. When the dirt sheets ran all of the disinformation and the misinformation campaigns on their behalf, was all the ones who were drudging up all of the conspiracy theories about him not showing up at Double or Nothing, or he showed up literally 10 minutes before his match. All that bullshit. You know? It's bullshit. And congratulations on actually getting some people turned up. But it's, again, when you look at CM Punk's pipe bomb promo, don't divorce it from its context. The context was people didn't like Vince or Stephanie or John Laurinaitis, and Punk is legitimately about to go until they made it right. And it was so good they made it right. So don't be surprised if within the next couple of months you find out that maybe MJF secretly re-signed a contract or signed for more money, and they're just going to keep it under wraps for a while. You know? Much like AEW has these big surprises that, you know, people are like, oh, it's a surprise, because Meltzer, who knows everything, somehow the people he talks to all the time, literally all the time, they're the ones who could pull a fast one over on him. The people he talks to all the time. His best friends, they can get around. It's ridiculous. So the MJF thing, it was good, nice fiery promo, but it's a work. And everybody who's like, it's a work, shoot, pipe bomb. I'm like, just look at what they're doing. You know, look at how, poetic it is. This is clearly a story. They just did a story with Wardlow wanting out of his contract. Now they're saying MJF wants out of his contract. When they go to commercial, it's CM Punk running to the ring. CM Punk is known for doing this pipe bomb promo type shit, this work, shoot shit with WWE. Now they're going to do the same. They're going to try to make MJF a second CM Punk. AEW's homegrown CM Punk. We'll see. We'll see. But that was really frustrating, because I was like, man, as somebody who don't really trust the dirt sheets already, I made the fatal mistake of actually thinking that they were not in on this. And Mark Madden, I want to give him some credit, because he said this, and I saw it right before Dynamite aired. And he started saying this the moment MJF was announced for Dynamite. Everybody started grumbling, because they was like, wait a minute. You just powerbombed this guy 10 times, and you did the stretcher thing, and everybody thought he was being written off. But here's what Mark Madden said. He says, the MJF con totally delegitimized the wrestling media, quote unquote, media's in quotations. How can anyone say otherwise? The media either got it conned or got it wrong, or were in on it. How can the wrestling media be trusted? I've worked in the media since 1978. I never got worked like that. It's a bunch of fanboys. Later on, he says, he said this first. I screenshotted him backwards. He says, Meltzer is in on it. Meltzer helped Brian Pillman with his work shoot at the expense of honest reporting. Why wouldn't he do it now for his buddy TK? This is why journalists need bosses, editors, and fact checkers, but these guys ain't journalists. And there have been people saying for the last few weeks that it was a work. And I was holding out, saying to myself, what real benefit do they have? And I still question that. I still ask the question, what's the benefit? But we'll see eventually, because I now am in the camp of this fully being a work. So hate to break it to y'all who still think it's a work shoot. I'm not a fan of work shoots, but whatever. All right, so Miro is back, Miro is back. He wrestles Johnny Elite. So he says that all this time he's been gone, he's been thinking, waiting, healing, wanting to save some of his fellow men. The bastards, the punks, the cowboys, even the pagans. And that God separated him from his gold. Then it says, my God, I no longer wish to come home. I wish to take yours. And so the Redeemer has returned. Miro is back. He looks phenomenal. They actually have a squash match featuring a named guy in Johnny Elite. He did a great job of actually making Miro look like an absolute beast. He looked good. And Miro wins with the game over. Johnny Elite did botch a flip in this match. I mean, it's just par for the course. You go to AEW, you forget how to do all of your shit. So Miro is back, and that's a good thing. This was supposed to be a secret, but Lana kind of gave it away. Again, you know, the network told them that they should chill on the surprises. So now what they do is these really heavy-handed hints. So it was announced as an open challenge. So if you weren't paying attention, if you didn't want to do any deep looking into it, it was announced as Johnny Elite has signed a contract for an open challenge against anybody in AEW. And okay. And then Lana tweeted out later on, like, I feel like watching Dynamite for some reason. And I was like, oh, okay, so Miro's going to be back. Well, thank you for that. Okay, so I like Miro. I like the Redeemer. I really was interested in where he was going with this character before he got derailed by the injury. Hopefully they figured it out. Hopefully they figured out where this character was going and who this character is. And I'm very interested in seeing where he goes from here. Chris Jericho comes out there, and he talks about winning at Double or Nothing, so that winning didn't come without a price. And he starts, talked about the injuries, the bumps, and the bruises, and all the crazy spots they had to go through. And that Eddie Kingston tried to light him on fire, and what kind of madman likes to light people on fire. And ultimately, they said that pro wrestlers meet sports entertainers. Sports entertainers are always going to win, always. Eddie Kingston interrupts. He's being very manic. He's running around, pacing back and forth, saying that he wants to fight them. And then he says, Mr. Regal, tell them how we want to fight them. And they got Regal to say blood and guts. And which is something that there's such fan service promotion that they saw a bunch of tweets about Regal's got to say blood and guts. Regal's got to say it. So they got Regal to say blood and guts. He didn't say it with the same emphasis that he says War Games. But it was close. It was close. Jericho, of course, was not thrilled by the whole blood and guts concept. But Kingston wanted to fight right now. So they jumped Kingston in the aisleway. This left Jericho in the ring by himself. He gets whopped in the head with a sock full of quarters or something like that by Ortiz. Ortiz then cuts a lock of Jericho's hair out of the back of his head. And so Jericho is pissed at this point, calls Ortiz a stupid son of a bitch. Says that, okay, you want blood and guts? Of course, we'll do it. But in exchange for blood and guts, I want a hair versus hair match with Ortiz. And I like the hair versus hair concept. I really do. I'm just not sure if Ortiz is the right guy. I guess it has to be somebody on that team with hair. I don't think you want to cut Santana's hair. And Eddie Kingston already has a low-cut hairstyle, so it kind of has to be Ortiz. But how many singles matches has Ortiz ever had in AEW? A handful? It's been 3 years. They have barely wrestled as a tag team on TV, let alone Ortiz wrestling as a singles wrestler. To have any sort of record or anything that he can even be a successful single star. And he's going to wrestle Chris Jericho in a hair versus hair match. Interesting. This leads us to the main event. Jon Moxley versus Daniel Garcia in a match that seemingly was no disqualifications. They were bleeding all over each other. Daniel Garcia is main event Garcia. He's always in the main event. They're really trying to push this guy as being a main event player, but he doesn't have anywhere near a main event personality, and nor a gimmick or anything of the sort. Again, wrestling is one of those things where it's because of the nature of the business, you can literally put anybody in any spot you want to put him in. You know, you can put Daniel Garcia in the main event of the show. Doesn't make him a main eventer though, because do people buy him in that spot? The answer is no. Nobody buys Daniel Garcia as a main event talent, and AEW is trying to force it by putting him in a match at the top of in the main event with Jon Moxley, just like they did with Wheeler Yuta. They tried to force it. It's not a natural main event progression for Daniel Garcia to be wrestling Jon Moxley in the quote-unquote main event of the show. If you look at the talent that's on this show, you think Daniel Garcia deserves to get pushed over all of these guys? You know, the Miros and Punk and FTR and MJF cutting the promo, and you know, he deserves to be in the main event over those guys? No. So you can tell it's completely and totally artificial. You know, I'm not saying he can't be a player. I'm saying he can't be a main event player. He's not over enough. You haven't done anything with him. He doesn't have... I know that, you know, there are certain people within the wrestling media. He's John Alba's boy, by the way. John Alba is a wrestling journalist who, you know, he talks more about baseball than wrestling. But he do talk about wrestling. He talks mostly about AEW. But that's one of his boys, is Daniel Garcia. So, but you have to convince the wider audience that Daniel Garcia is a main event guy. They tried to do it with Sammy Guevara, and you see it didn't really work either. You can't just put people in spots and say, well, that's what your spot is. It's like, no, he has to earn that. You got to earn being in the main event, man. Anybody, Tony Khan can put you wherever he wants you on the card. I mean, it's literally booking. But if people don't buy into it, and nobody fucking buys Daniel Garcia. Now, they had a physical match, very physical. I don't know why they insist on bleeding every damn week. They was bleeding all over each other. And Jon Moxley gave Daniel Garcia a suplex on some stairs. It looked like it hurt a lot. It looked like it hurt a lot. Like a lot to the second power. It did not look good. I did like the stretch sharpshooter that Daniel Garcia does, and that Jon Moxley countered it into the Bulldog choke. I like that. The finish came from a paradigm shift into a Bulldog choke after Jericho tried to distract Moxley. Perfectly fine match. You know, Garcia is a very physical performer. He's a decent worker in between the ropes, but he's, you know, the getting over is not in between the ropes. It's outside. It's outside the ring. It's in your persona, how you carry yourself, your presentation. None of that screams that Daniel Garcia is a main eventer. And I wish they would stop doing this. Stop doing that to this guy, man. You know, you're really trying to force it. AEW is trying so hard to make their own stars that they really just kind of make themselves look silly. And they tried to do the same thing with Daniel Garcia that they did with Wheeler Yuta. Like, Wheeler Yuta had that bloody, stupid match with Jon Moxley on Rampage. So they decided, well, we're just going to do it again with Daniel Garcia, and this time it's going to work again. And it's like, to be quite honest, it didn't work the first time. Nobody believes in Wheeler Yuta outside of people who want to believe in Wheeler Yuta. Nobody sees him as a badass or a tough guy or anybody who fits the Blackpool Combat Club. It's like nobody believes that Daniel Garcia fits the Jericho Appreciation Society. He looks silly. He sticks out like a green thumb on a yellow hand. It's ridiculous. Stop doing this stop doing dumb shit. Right? Just be less stupid. Alright. Third match. The Undisputed Elite plus Hikuleo versus Jurassic Express, Darby Allin, Matt Hardy, and Christian Cage. Alright, so Adam Cole was removed from this match due to injury, and Jeff Hardy was removed from this match due to his body being held together by alcohol and duct tape. So Jeff Hardy's especially beat up after, you know, the thrashings that he's been taking over the last month or so, because they refuse to let Jeff or Matt work a real match. They have to do stuff with ladders, they have to jump off shit, and They just couldn't ease. They forgot that these guys are in their 40s. Like, I know that sometimes you think your heroes last forever, but that's like I was talking about Undertaker and Goldberg. Sometimes you just have to understand that Father Time is no jobber. He ain't no jobber. He is the one with the undefeated streak. Eventually, it's time to stop. And if you're going to feature the Hardys, you have to change how you feature them. They also have to vary up their offense. They have to redesign themselves. You know? And this was the one positive thing about the whole Broken Hardys, is that it added new life to the Hardy Boys. You know? And they could work a different style. And it would be nice if Jeff would modify his style a little bit in order for longevity. Maybe you need to retire the Whisper in the Wind. Maybe you need to retire, some of your high flying. Maybe you need to retire the Swanton Bomb. Maybe it's time to invent and come up with a new finisher. Maybe. Why not? You guys already decided to come up with the Lake of Reincarnation and all this other shit, and you can't come up with a new finish? You've been in the business 30 years, you can't come up with a new finisher that doesn't involve you jumping off the top rope anymore? You can't. You have to do the Whisper in the Wind, even though you're botching it and fucking it up and your boots coming loose and all this kind of stuff. You're going to hurt yourself. At some point, you have to decide, I can't do that shit anymore. It's like when we was talking about Jericho. What was this, last year or 2 years ago? And he was botching the lion salt. And everybody kept saying, Jericho, you're getting fat. Stop doing it. And then Jericho would go out there and specifically do it to make sure we all see that he can still do it. My thing is, it's time for the Hardy Boys to slow down. I know everybody has come to love the Hardy offensive style, but we need to move beyond that. We need to grow up a little bit. For their own sake. These guys are in their mid-40s, man. It's very tough. So everybody's like, oh, Jeff is all beat up, and it's like, man, what you talking about? We saw that Jeff was more than a half step slow in WWE. We saw that he was really so much slower than he used to be. He was almost always off. It's just been more pronounced in AEW because the opponents are so much faster and they're not protecting him. And he also is not protecting them because he's crushing guys with those goddamn Swanton bombs. But he was removed from the match. Adam Cole's removed. He was replaced with Darby Allin. And Adam Cole's replaced with Hikuleo. If you don't know who Hikuleo is, don't matter. He's the third brother in God, by the way. He's Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa's brother. If you don't know who they are, that's tough for you. I'm not digging any more of that dirt. All right, we're going to go on any further than that. He's a Bullet Club guy. All right, so the Undisputed Elite win the match. Christian tries to console Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy is getting upset now. It seems like they're going to really... They tease a little heat between Matt and Christian in this match, too. So, I'm almost there. I'm almost right. Almost. Alright, so then we also get Swerve Strickland and his entourage. Like, there was so much going on. I'm trying to figure out who these people are, why they exist on here, and as I'm trying to figure out who these people are, what's so important about Swerve's jacket. We're already at Swerve in our glory. And I was just kind of like, ugh. That's just... I don't want to swerve in anything except somebody's daughter. I'll swerve all day in that. I have no interest in swerving in the glory of I have no interest in that. My interest in that is at zero. And I'm questioning why they're still a tag team. I don't know. Why are they a tag team at all? I guess it's the only place where they fit, because they don't fit as singles competitors. Either one of these guys would be far better opponents for Scorpio Sky. We'll talk about Scorpio Sky in a second. But I guess it's just, you're a thumbtack on the board at this point. Hey, everybody look at Keith Lee. He's still here, and we're going to put him in the tag team. But I don't know what the point of this was, but to introduce us to Swerve's entourage, because he's on some mogul stuff now. I'm like, who cares, bro? Like, really? Who really cares? All right, Athena, she cuts a promo. She says that there was no surprise why she's here because of all the top talent in the women's division in AEW, and one woman in particular. And she said, we're going to have ourselves a real talk moment. And says that all streaks are made to be broken, and I will break it. Jade Cargill interrupts, passes the mic to Stokely Hathaway, her publicist, who says that Jade Cargill is a queen. She is a goddess. She is a TBS champion. And that she knows that Athena wants her little title match. But it ain't going to be tonight. Which, of course, is not going to be tonight because AEW announces everything at least a week or two in advance. So, this wasn't as cringe as Athena's usual promos. You know, it was just her talking, which I'm guessing is better. But then again, it was also short, and she got 3 sentences out before Jade Cargill cut her off. So, Kiera Hogan stepped up to get in Athena's face. All the other girls came up there too. Statlander, Anna Jay. Okay. The referees quickly got involved to separate them. I mean, they let Jericho get bopped in the head with a sock earlier, and they didn't do shit. All of a sudden, these chicks are just staring at each other like they're about to do something, and there's like 100 refs come out of nowhere like, no, you can't stare at one another. Whatever. They did the stare down between Athena and Jade Cargill, too, which was a good visual. Even though, you know, Jade Cargill is wearing heels, she just looks like she's towering over, how about I call her Ember Moon, Athena. So, okay. And Athena will make her in-ring debut wrestling Kiera Hogan on Rampage. Which should tell you what Tony Khan thinks of her if her debut match is going to be on the Rampage, a show that didn't even get 400,000 viewers. That's right, folks. And it came on at 6 o'clock or something like that. I don't know, man. Rampage has been looking bad. I'm hoping that it's all been the constant bouncing around, that there's been no consistency, and therefore it's hard to gauge how well it really is doing outside of its normal time slot, because there's no extra time slot that they could add it to. Like, if you were going to bump it from 10, then it just makes 7 to 8 the normal time slot, or 6 to 7 or whatever, and then you could let people get used to it, But they bouncing it around. It's 5 o'clock one week, 6 the next, 7 the next, 12 the next. It's like, come on, man. Of course people don't feel the need to tune in. They don't even know when the fucking show coming on. But with that chaos out there, and I'm pretty sure it's not over because the NBA Finals isn't over, you still got Athena making her debut there instead of making her debut on Dynamite, the show that everybody watches. I guess, we're trying to give people a reason to watch Rampage. Fuck you. Most people that knows that she's going to beat Kiera Hogan, that's not going to be a reason to watch Rampage. She's going to be on Dark Elevation in a couple of weeks. Over under Athena being on Dark Elevation within the next 60 days. 60 days from today. 60 days from today. 60 days from today. She's going to make at least one Dark or Dark Elevation match within the next 60 days. Guarantee it. Within the next 2 months. Guarantee it. She's going to have at least one. Fourth match. Wardlow versus JD Drake. If you like Arn Anderson, then you can make Arn Anderson fat and 25 years older, and you get JD Drake. And if Arn Anderson looked like he drove a Budweiser truck cross country, that would be JD Drake. JD Drake looks like he chews sunflower seeds and spits the shells on his own carpet. JD Drake looks like he uses a plunger to clean the sink and the toilet without washing it. JD Drake just looks like he lives in a small town with one general store, and the girl who runs the cash register is his cousin's sister. This dude is the shits. How he manages to keep a job, beyond me. Look, I saw him in Evolve where they tried to treat him like he was a big star. It was a joke to me then. It was like fucking Bobby Hill from King of the Hill being a champion on a wrestling show. I just didn't buy it. You know, it's the same thing with just Trevor Murdoch. Like the days of a guy having that body type and being taken seriously because he's a good old boy from the country who loves pro wrestling. That shit dead as disco. Alright? Dead as disco. The only good thing that he brings to the table in this respect is his size. Because that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for Wardlow to be able to powerbomb a big dude and look impressive doing it. So Wardlow gets his music back. He also walks from a far distance so that people can chant Wardlow, or because he wants them to chant Goldberg. Tony Khan just needs to have his version of everything. MJF is going to be his version of CM Punk. Wardlow is going to be his version of Goldberg. It's just going to have his version of everything. It's like they have red pop, we're going to have strawberry pop. It's like, okay, whatever. JD Drake actually got on an offense, which made no sense. That second powerbomb on JD Drake looked kind of weak. It looked kind of weak. But Wardlow wins. He should have wins. He should have won. Of course, he should have won a lot sooner. Having JD Drake land so many chops on him seemed kind of weird to me. Tony Schiavone then wanted to interview Wardlow, and this was interrupted by Mark Sterling, who has some paperwork. Apparently, the security team that Wardlow has been beating up for the past 2 months wants to sue him. Wardlow then promptly powerbombs another security guy and then says that Sterling doesn't watch the product, which I thought was funny. So, there's one thing that I noticed, and they're all probably going to get upset at me for saying this, but somebody needs to say it. Wardlow is already substantially less over than he was on Sunday. It didn't take long, did it? I think I said this. How much of that love for Wardlow was people really liking Wardlow versus people really not liking MJF? Now that his character arc is over, what do we do with Wardlow? That was my question. I have been saying that for weeks. Now that his character arc is over, he's free from MJF. What do we do with Wardlow? Their response: a feud of some sort with Mark Sterling. That's what they came up with. He's going to be in a feud of some description with Mark Sterling. Hopefully there's a real wrestler somewhere around here. Somebody who can actually be a challenge to this guy. But you can already see his momentum is already off the path. You saw it when they did it with Hook. Hook was, rolling. And then he started getting into it with QT Marshall. And he got derailed by QT Marshall. Nobody wanted to see that shit. Nobody cared what the fuck they were talking about. It was just another thing on the show. And now we got Mark Sterling, who apparently has been booted away from Jade Cargill. And he's now like, a G tier character? And he's supposed to be some type of threat to Wardlow? Come on. In any capacity? A lawsuit? Whatever. I don't know, man. Boy. Come on, Wardlow. Push through. You gotta keep trying, bro. They're not gonna help you at all in AEW. You need to come up with your own ideas. Maybe you need to save somebody. Maybe you need to be Brian Cage or something like that. They need to step up and challenge Wardlow and give him somebody bigger than he is that can put him in jeopardy, get him some sympathy and all that kind of stuff. Because this Mark Sterling thing is not going to work out. It sucks. And I don't even like Brian Cage. So you know how bad things must be if I'm trying to pitch a Brian Cage feud. I don't like Brian Cage. I'm just trying to keep Wardlow's momentum up. Because they don't want to make him a champion. They don't want to put him in the hunt for a belt either. So that means he needs to have a personal feud. And his personal feuds need to be something that's going to further his momentum. Not fucking powerbombing random security guys. That's going to get boring soon. It's going to get boring real quick. All right, speaking of Scorpio Sky, him and his friends talk about the potential of Dante Martin, and that potential is good, but it's not. He's still nowhere close to Scorpio Sky. He doesn't have the experience. He's going to be, I don't know, something about Jenny, which is what he named the TNT belt. Dante Martin says that I think I'm better than you are right now, and I was like, oh, well, riveting stuff. Absolutely riveting personality work from Dante Martin. They're not doing that kid any favors. But at least he's being featured, and he's in a TV title match, I guess. It's not going to win, but maybe it ought to be just a nice little showcase. It ought to be nice. I don't know. Ever since the whole thing with him having 100 mentors flopped, that kid's been lost in the shuffle. The last match, which wasn't the main event, but it's the last match I haven't talked about yet. Toni Storm and Ruby Soho versus Jamie Hayter and Britt Baker. Britt Baker actually takes a pinfall in this match. But she got pinned by Ruby Soho. So Ruby can win when it doesn't matter. Okay. I guess the point of this was to give Ruby her win back and to rebuild faith in Ruby as a character. But Toni Storm looked really good here. She came in on the hot tag. She looked really fiery. Really good. And she did some of the stuff in between the moves really well too. Like right before her hip attack. And that hip attack looked like it hurt like hell. And Tony's, her wagon ain't as big as it was. WWE made sure that she slimmed down a little bit. But she's still a very well-built girl, And so she got a lot of hip in that hip attack. And she snapped Jamie Hayter's back, like she got hit in the face with a baseball. Shit. You feel like Dolph Ziggler. It should have been me! Anyway, after the match, Jamie Hayter hit Ruby Soho in the head with the Owen Hart belt. Okay, so this thing is just never going to end. It's never going to be over. There's going to be a permanent feud between Britt Baker, Jamie Hayter, and Ruby Soho. Good Lord. Help us all end this. Who cares? Alright, so this episode of Dynamite started out pretty hot with the Tanahashi reveal. Miro coming out there, the MJF promo. I'll give all of those things top marks. Those things were pretty good. I'm a big fan of Tanahashi. So I can't say anything negative about the Ace other than that he's just old. And that's not talking bad about him. It's just a fact. I think he's in his mid-40s. He's had a bunch of surgeries. He's not who he used to be. But it's still going to be fun watching him, It's still fun to watch him wrestle. It's not fun to watch him wrestle like Zack Sabre Jr. But it's fun for him to watch him wrestle most other people. But Tanahashi is one of those guys that they treat him like Yuji Nagata and shit now, Like he's kind of like one of the old guys on the roster. He just gets pushed a lot more than they do. I don't know why they had CM Punk his first night as champion. He's wrestling in a 6-man tag. It really just didn't occur to me right now until that happened. Like, why wouldn't they have his first night as champion with him in an in-ring promo talking about Hangman Page and, what his plans are? And I get they kind of did that when they said that he's got a lot to learn and that he's made a lot of mistakes and he's going to learn from them. So maybe that's what that was. But we still didn't really need that 6-man tag. Whatever. I'm not going to tell Booker of the Year what to do. I loved Miro's return. I actually liked his return promo too. They picked a decent opponent for him. I would have picked like Ryan Nemeth, of course. I think it probably would have been a better opponent for him because Ryan Nemeth sells like Dolph, and you probably needed somebody to do like all the flip flopping around for Miro. Speaking of which, Miro will be a great opponent for Wardlow. Neither one of them need to lose, which is why you probably shouldn't do it. But he would be a great opponent for Wardlow. MJF work shoot promo. What's the work and what's the shoot, bro? In my opinion, all of it is a work. The point of which is to increase MJF's value and hopefully impress Warner Brothers and Discovery by being able to create episodic television and get people hooked on this storyline. Which, as I sat and thought about it, as I was talking about other things, I was thinking about this. And I was saying to myself, maybe that is the goal. Maybe the goal is to create some type of episodic storyline that's going to keep you coming back week to week. Maybe that's the goal. And to that I say, I don't know if you can do it. I don't have a full faith that you can actually make that work. But you're welcome to try. So the first hour was pretty tight. Everything else was, Jericho getting hit in the head with a sock was funny. You know, I thought Ortiz was going to do more than cut that little bit of lock of hair out of his head, but it was okay. I like the hair versus hair idea. I'm just not so sure if Ortiz is the right guy to do it. But then again, he's the only one who has long hair outside of Santana, and I don't think they want to cut his hair. So I guess we're stuck with it. And there was really nothing else on the show after that I really cared about after, you know, the Moxley Jericho stuff or the Kingston Jericho stuff. Well, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace and be blessed.
MagMongoSlade. Best house I ever drew, Daddy.